I had been the bait. The thought did not break me. That annoyed Cassian. He dragged me through the forest with Graceire men closing around us, expecting tears, curses, begging, any bright little proof that fear had finally taught me manners. I gave him none of it. Not because I was calm. Calm was for women who had slept, eaten, and were not bleeding through a ritual mark carved into their own throat. I was not calm. I was counting. 12 men. 2 limping. 1 with a cracked rib, judging by the way he held his breath downhill. 3 archers. 4 swords. Cassian. 2 men who kept glancing behind us, as if Riven might crawl through the trees in blood and fury alone. The road bent east after the black pine split, then over the shallow ford, then Graceire's lower hunting path, the one servants used when alphas did not want guests seeing how many things entered the estate dead. Cassian's grip tightened in my curls. "You are quiet," he said. "I remember you louder. I remember you taller." His mouth twitched. Good. Cassian Vale had always hated being made small. That was one of the few things about him I had once understood correctly. He jerked me closer. Careful. "Why will you reject me again? I should dress better for the occasion." The old bond pain struck before his hand did. Not love, not longing, something uglier. A hook beneath old ceremony scar tissue. My knees threatened to fold, but I locked them and let the pain pass through my teeth instead of out of my mouth. Cassian watched for the scream. I smiled. It cost me. That made it worth more. His eyes hardened. Marius was right. You do bring out the worst in men. "No," I said. "I reveal what was already rotting." He shoved me forward. I stumbled, caught myself, and kept counting. Graceire rose from the hill just before dawn. The estate had not changed. That felt like an insult. The same iron gate twisted into wolf shapes, the same moon arch over the entry road, the same stone pillars carved with veil names, as if lineage was anything more than old men stacking sins high enough to call them heritage. Smoke curled from the chimneys. Guards moved along the wall. Women watched from narrow windows and disappeared when Cassian looked up. I knew those windows. I knew what it was to stand behind them, with a collar at my throat and no door that opened from the inside. My self-claiming mark burned beneath dried blood and ash. Mine. The word held. Barely. But it held. Cassian dragged me through the gate. One of the guards laughed when he saw me. "Brought the rogue's prize back?" Cassian stopped. The guard's laugh died. "She is not a prize," Cassian said softly. For one foolish breath, the words almost sounded like decency. Then he added, "She is evidence." There it was. Men always found cleaner words for cages when other men were listening. They took me through the main hall, not the cells below. Servants froze along the walls. A girl carrying coal dropped one piece and flinched before it hit the floor. Her wrists were bruised where someone had grabbed too hard too often. I saw her. She saw me seeing. Then she looked down. Not weakness. Survival. Cassian noticed my gaze and smiled. "Still collecting broken things? Riven has made you sentimental. Someone has to notice what your pack keeps stepping over." He leaned near my ear. "Notice all you like. You will not be here long enough to save anyone." That was where he was wrong. Men like Cassian mistook rescue for doors kicked open and blades drawn. Sometimes rescue began with counting. Sometimes it began with looking a frightened girl in the eye long enough for her to remember she was not invisible. We turned left instead of down. My stomach tightened before the door even opened. The old, bridal chamber. Of course. Graceire did love putting rot in pretty rooms. Red drapes hung from the high windows. A polished basin stood near the hearth. There was a carved chair by the bed, a silver tray of combs, pins, ribbons, and oils, arranged like weapons pretending to be ornaments. On the far wall, a hook remained, where ceremonial collars were hung before second claims. I stared at it. Cassian watched my face. I gave him nothing. "Do I get flowers?" I asked, "or just the shackles?" "That depends on how you behave." "Shackles, then. I hate flowers." He shut the door hard enough to rattle the latch. From the outside, a prettier cage. Graceire's specialty. They left me alone for 10 minutes. Long enough to want me imagining. Short enough to remind me I was watched. I used the time to search. Window, barred, old rust at the lower right. Not enough to break without tools. Hearth, narrow, recently swept. Useless for escape, but good for hiding small things. Basin, ceramic. Heavy enough to crack a skull if the skull came close with confidence. Bedposts. Carved oak tied too many women before me, judging by the small, worn grooves near the base. I touched one groove with 2 fingers. Then I pulled my hand back. Not today. The door opened. The coal girl entered with a pitcher, followed by an older woman carrying folded cloth. The older one had a widow's debt mark cut at the edge of her jaw, the kind Graceire carved when a woman's husband died, owing what his bones could no longer pay. The girl kept her eyes low. "Water," the older woman said. Her voice was flat. Too flat. A woman learned that tone when she could not afford feeling until later. "What are your names?" I asked. The girl's hands shook around the pitcher. The older woman looked toward the door. "No one asked for conversation," she said. "No one asked for me either. Yet here I am." A flicker crossed her face. Not amusement, recognition. "Rowena," she said after a moment. "This is Annika." Annika's eyes lifted. Deep brown cheeks, freckles over the nose, bruises at both wrists. "You are the one from the sanctuary," she whispered. "I am the one who was taken from it." That is what they said. They say many things when their mouths are bored. Rowena set the cloth on the bed. "They will prepare you for hearing." Hearing? Alpha Marius called neighboring packs, not all. Enough. Cassian's words settled colder. Evidence. I looked at the red cloth. "And this?" "Ceremonial dress." I picked it up, held it against myself, then deliberately tore the left sleeve at the seam. Annika gasped. I handed it back to Rowena. "Poor stitching." Rowena stared at the tear, then at me. Then she understood. "If it must be repaired," she said slowly, "the seamstress returns." "Does she talk?" "Everyone talks when they think no one important is listening." "Good." Annika was still staring at the torn sleeve like it had become a map. I lowered my voice. "How many guards in this hall?" She swallowed. 4. "How often do they change?" "I don't—" "You do. You hear boots. Count them." Her mouth opened, then closed. I softened nothing, but I kept my voice steady. "If you are scared, be useful while you shake." Something in her straightened. "Every 2 hours," she said, "but the east stair guard leaves early when kitchen bells ring." Rowena gave her a sharp look. Annika flinched. I said, "Good." The word landed strangely, like praise was a thing she had forgotten how to hold. Rowena moved to the basin and dipped a cloth. "Your neck needs cleaning." "No." She paused. "That mark stays visible," I said. "They will not like that. They can be disappointed. It will build character." Annika made a small sound into her hand. Not quite laughter. "Enough." Footsteps approached. Rowena bent over the torn dress. Annika poured water with sudden, perfect obedience. By the time the door opened, they looked like servants, and I looked like a prisoner too proud to sit. Cassian entered first. Behind him came Alpha Marius Vale. I had met cruel men who enjoyed noise. Marius was worse. He enjoyed stillness. He was broad through the shoulders, iron threaded through his dark beard, eyes cold enough to measure a grave before the body fell. He looked at the torn sleeve, the untouched water, the mark at my throat. Then he smiled. Not at me. At what I represented. "Flavia Underwood," he said. "You have caused a great deal of trouble. I would apologize, but I try not to lie before breakfast." Cassian's fingers twitched. Marius only smiled wider. "I see why my son rejected you. And yet here you are, dragging me back like a man who cannot bear his own decisions." Cassian stepped forward. Marius lifted one hand. Cassian stopped. That interested me. Not love between them, not respect. Control. Marius came closer, stopping just beyond reach. Wise of him. "Riven will come," he said. I said nothing. "He will come wounded, poisoned, furious, carrying his dead mate's oath in one hand, and you in the other. My hands are not available for carrying." "No," Marius said. "You are the scale." The room seemed to tighten around the word. "He can claim you and break his sanctuary's law," Marius continued. "He can leave you here and prove his refuge is a song for frightened women, nothing more. Or he can use the old command and show every alpha in the north what he truly is." My mouth dried. I did not let him see it. And if he does none of those? Marius leaned closer. "Then we break the sanctuary one woman at a time, until he learns urgency." The Cole girl's breath caught. I did not look at Annika. Not yet. Marius's eyes stayed on me. Every alpha in the north will watch him choose what kind of monster he wants to be. I smiled then. Small. Sharp. "Men do love setting traps," I said. "You never wonder what happens when the bait grows teeth." For the first time, Marius's smile faded. Behind him, Annika stood in the open doorway, just long enough to lift 2 fingers, then scratch once against the pitcher handle. 2 guards. 1 weak latch. I kept my face still. The trap had begun counting itself for me. The trap had begun counting itself for me. That did not mean I was free. It meant Graceire had made the mistake of bringing me somewhere with doors, servants, habits, and men who believed silence meant obedience. Marius left first. Cassian lingered. Of course he did. He stood near the door with one hand resting on the latch, looking at my self-claiming mark as if it offended him personally. Maybe it did. Cassian Vale had always preferred women as mirrors. He wanted devotion reflected back, never truth. "You think that little mark makes you untouchable?" he asked. "No," I said. "I think it makes you angry." His jaw tightened. There. Still easy. That was almost disappointing. Cassian crossed the room in 3 strides and caught my chin between his fingers. I did not flinch. I let him feel the steadiness of my bones. "You are in my father's house." I noticed. The air smells like old debts and men congratulating each other. His grip sharpened. Then came the word. Rejected. The old pain hooked through me. Brutal. Familiar. Mean as a hand inside my ribs. My breath stopped for half a heartbeat, but I did not give him the satisfaction of bending. I stared straight into his eyes, while the ache scraped through whatever ceremony had left behind. When I could speak, I said, "Do you practice that in mirrors?" His mouth curled. "You will break eventually." "Then you should hurry. You have always lacked patience." A voice called from the hall. "Cassian." "Marius." Cassian released me like he had decided to, not like he had been ordered. Men were always making pride out of obedience when it saved them shame. At the threshold he glanced back. "When Riven comes for you, I hope you see what he really is." "I already have," I said. "That is your problem." The door shut. The lock turned. For 3 breaths, no one moved. Then Annika's fingers slid from the pitcher handle. 2 guards. 1 weak latch. Rowena watched me with a face carved from every warning a woman survived by swallowing. "You are going to get that girl killed," she said. Annika stiffened. I looked at Rowena. "Graceire is already doing that. I'm trying to make it inconvenient." Rowena's mouth flattened. Not disagreement. Fear of wearing older clothes. I moved to the bed and picked up the torn ceremonial dress. Red silk, heavy embroidery, tiny silver moons stitched along the bodice, as if a pretty thread could make ownership holy. "How many women are locked below?" I asked. Rowena did not answer. I tore another seam. Annika made a small, strangled sound. "Poor stitching," I said. Rowena stared at the ripped fabric. 9 in the lower rooms, 3 marked for debt transfer, 1 widow too old to fetch a price, but not old enough for mercy. And the servants? Too many. That is not a number. It is the safest one. I held the dress out. "Bring the seamstress." "She will be searched." "Then she should carry nothing. Words weigh less." Annika whispered. "Mila comes after the 2nd bell. She mends the house linens." "Good, Annika, you count boots. Not faces. Boots. Men change expressions when they lie. Boots stay honest." Her hands trembled around the pitcher. "If you are caught looking," Rowena said sharply, "say you were checking mud." Annika blinked at her. Rowena looked annoyed by her own usefulness. Men like clean floors when they are about to spill blood on them. I almost smiled. Almost. "Rowena," I said, "who controls kitchen bells?" "Old Tavia." "Can she be trusted?" "No." "Can she be bribed?" "With what?" I looked around the bridal chamber. Silver combs, oil bottles, ribbon pins, all the pretty little instruments used to make a woman suitable for being handed over. I picked up a comb with pearl teeth and snapped it in half against the bedpost. Annika gasped again. Rowena's eyes narrowed. I handed her the broken piece with the silver backing. "With this." Rowena took it. Slowly. "Old Tavia likes silver," she said. "Then tell her there will be more if bells ring wrong at the right time." "And what is the right time?" "When men stop watching the doors because they are watching Riven." The name did something to the room. Annika looked toward the window. Rowena looked at me. "You think he is coming," she said. "I know he wants to." "That is not the same." "No," I said. "It is better if he remembers that." Neither woman understood. Not fully. But I did. I had seen Riven bleeding on sanctuary stone, old power straining against his skin. I had watched him reach for the command that could have ended the battle and ruined everything worth saving. Then I told him no. And he had obeyed. That was what Marius had not counted. A man who wanted power could be trapped by power. A man who chose restraint had to be wounded a different way. That was why I was here. Mila, the seamstress, arrived after the 2nd bell with a needle tucked behind one ear and terror tucked behind both eyes. She was narrow-shouldered, older than Annika, younger than Rowena, with a healing split at the corner of her mouth. She took one look at the ruined dress and whispered, "Oh, girl." "I know," I said. "Tragic. That sleeve alone took 3 days. Then we honor its memory by ruining the other one." Rowena coughed. It might have been laughter if Graceire had not beaten the sound out of the room years ago. Mila knelt by the bed and spread the fabric across her lap. "They will inspect the hem." "Then put nothing in it." Her needle paused. "Use knots," I said. 3 where the east stair is watched. 1 where a latch is weak. Leave a loose thread wherever a woman can run without being seen. Mila lifted her gaze. "That is madness," No, I said. Madness is sewing women into gowns for men who call it law. This is alteration. Annika's mouth trembled. This time, she did laugh. Quietly. Briefly. Enough. Milla bent over the dress. Needle in. Needle out. A map began to grow where decoration had been. By dusk, Marius returned with the captain at his side, an irritation in his eyes. That pleased me before he even spoke. I stood near the hearth with my throat unwashed, my mark uncovered, and the red dress half-mended on the chair. Marius noticed all of it. You are determined to look difficult. I try to dress for the room. The captain leaned close and murmured something. Marius's expression did not change, but satisfaction slipped from the air. My heartbeat sharpened. News. From the sanctuary. I kept my face bored because men gave more away when they believed women were too stupid to understand silence. Marius dismissed the captain with 2 fingers. Cassian had entered behind him. He looked restless. That meant the news had disappointed him too. Good. Marius turned to me. Your rogue lives. The room tilted. Only a little. Only inside me. I did not close my eyes. I did not thank any god. I did not let my knees remember exhaustion. Riven lived. Poisoned. Bleeding. Furious. Alive. Marius watched for relief. I gave him teeth instead. Shame, I said. You staged all this and still failed to kill the man. Cassian stepped forward. He is barely standing. But standing. Because that old healer keeps pouring bitterroot into him, Cassian snapped. Because his women barred the gate like frightened hens and begged him not to ride. His women. I stored the insult for later. Marius's gaze cut toward his son. Cassian realized he had said too much. Too late. Riven had tried to come. The women had stopped him. And he had let them. He could have commanded them aside, Marius said softly, studying me. Do you know that? Even poisoned, he had enough oath left to drop every woman in that yard to her knees. My chest tightened. Marius came closer. He did not. I said nothing. The words were too dangerous to touch. He did not. He remembered. He chose. Cassian's face twisted with contempt. Weakness. No, I said before I could stop myself. Both men looked at me. I lifted my chin. Discipline. Marius's eyes sharpened. There. A mistake. Not because I had praised Riven. Because I had revealed the trap's missing hinge. Marius smiled again, slow and unpleasant. Then we will test how disciplined he remains, when you are placed beneath the moon arch, before witnesses. Annika's fingers tightened around the folded linens near the door. Marius did not look at her. I did. Briefly. A warning. Stay still. He continued. At noon tomorrow, the Northern Alphas will hear Graceire's claim. Riven will attend, or we will begin transferring the debt women one by one. Rowena went rigid. Marius smiled at that too. He may refuse power for himself, he said. Let us see if he refuses it for them. The old anger rose in me, hot and clean. Not wild. Useful. You keep making the same mistake, I said. And what mistake is that? You think women are pressure points. Marius tilted his head. I smiled. You never wonder what happens when we press back. For a moment, the stillness around him cooled into something closer to hate. Then he turned and left. Cassian followed, but not before looking at the red dress. What did you do to it? I widened my eyes. Suffered poor craftsmanship. He slammed the door hard enough to shake dust from the frame. The lock turned again. Annika waited 3 breaths before whispering, Noon. Yes. Rowena's voice came rough. Debt transfers mean wagons. Then wagons need wheels, I said. Wheels need pins. Pins go missing. Milla swallowed. And if they search us? Then they find frightened women, I said. Men are fond of finding what they expect. Outside, down the hall, boots shifted. 2 guards. One with a drag in his left step. One who leaned too long against the weak latch. The house was still counting. After the 3rd bell, Annika returned alone with fresh water no one had asked for. Her face was steady now. That worried me more than shaking had. She set the pitcher down and leaned close as if adjusting the basin cloth. A rider came from the ridge, she breathed. I heard through the coal grate. What did he say? The sanctuary women opened an old stone under an ash grove. My pulse changed. Annika looked toward the door. There was a grave. Siren. The name moved through me without being spoken. What else? Annika's voice dropped until it barely touched the air. He said there were words carved there. I gripped the basin edge. What words? She swallowed. Break it, where women witness. For the first time since Graceire's gates closed behind me, I smiled without pretending. Marius wanted an audience of alphas. He had forgotten to count the women. That became the first instruction. Count the women. Not the guards. Not the alphas riding toward Graceire with polished boots and rotten laws. Not the men waiting to watch Riven become either saint, coward, or monster. The women. Marius wanted witnesses. Fine. I would give him more than he could stomach. Annika stood by the basin, fingers tucked into her apron, as if she could hide the trembling by trapping it against her stomach. Say it again, I told her. Her eyes darted to the door. Rowena moved first, crossing the room and pressing one ear to the wood. After a moment, she lifted 2 fingers. 2 guards. Still. Annika swallowed. The rider said they opened an old stone beneath the ash grove. At the sanctuary. Siren. The name did not need to be spoken to enter the room. It moved through the walls like cold smoke. I remembered Riven's voice in his office, cut down to bone when he told me what he had chosen. Not a blade. Not a hand around Siren's throat. Worse, maybe, because men always loved sins they could point to more than sins they had to carry. He had chosen the dominance oath over the mate bond, and Siren had died because of it. I had once thrown her name at him like a weapon. I still hated myself for how easily my anger had found the sharpest thing in reach. Graceire would do worse. Graceire would dig up a dead woman's warning and call it evidence. What else? I asked. Annika shook her head. Only pieces. The captain was angry because the rider said the grave had writing. Break it where women witness, I said. She nodded quickly. Yes. Rowena turned from the door. Her mouth had gone tight. You know what that means? I asked. I know old law, she said. Enough to hate it. Then speak. Rowena looked at Annika, then at Milla, who had come back with thread and a face full of dread. Oaths made by alphas used to be broken before witnesses. Not just anyone. Recognized witnesses. Men, I said. Alphas, Rowena corrected. Betas sometimes. Male elders. Men with land, bloodline, command. Women watched from corners and carried water after. Of course. Even when power broke, women were expected to mop up the floor. I touched the mark at my throat. It had dried unevenly. Ash still clung to the cut edges. The skin around it throbbed, but the pain pleased me now. It was proof no man had made the last mark on me. Then Siren changed the witness list, I said. Rowena's eyes narrowed. Not confusion. Fear catching up to understanding. Marius will not allow that. Marius does not have to allow the sun to rise either. It still makes a habit of it. Milla sat slowly on the edge of the bed. The red ceremonial dress pooled across her lap. She had not stitched anything since Annika whispered the message. You want women in the hearing, Mila said. I want women everywhere. Rowena gave a short, humorless laugh. That is usually how houses are kept running. Then let Graceire notice. I crossed to the dress and knelt in front of Mila. The silk was heavy between us, red as old ceremony blood, a garment meant to make me look claimed before anyone asked if I consented. I hated it, so I used it. Keep the knots, I said. 3 for guards, 1 for weak latches, 2 for stairs. Leave a loose thread wherever a servant can stand without being ordered away. Mila's fingers tightened around the needle. They will see. Men rarely inspect women's work unless they think it is for them. That is because they are fools, Rowena muttered. Yes, I said. Let us make use of tradition. Annika breathed something that might have been a prayer and might have been a curse. I looked at her. How many women are in the kitchens? At this hour. 8. More by morning. Laundry? 6. Coal rooms? 4 girls, 2 boys. Old Hessa, if her knees hold. Lower rooms? Rowena answered. 9 debt women, 1 with fever, 1 who cannot walk fast. They do not need to run tomorrow, I said. They need to hear. Mila stopped threading the needle. I held her gaze. If Riven speaks, they hear. If he renounces the oath, they hear. If Marius lies afterward, they repeat the truth until every corner of this estate knows it. And if Marius kills witnesses? Rowena asked. Then he admits women counted. The room went still. That was the ugliness of it, the simple, bloody math. Rowena looked away first. Annika did not. Her fear had not left, but something had stood up inside it. Good. Fear with a spine could still walk. A knock came at the door. Not a servant's knock. Rowena snatched the dress up. Mila bent over the hem. Annika grabbed the pitcher. I stood. The door opened. Marius entered with no announcement. Behind him came a man I had last seen in smoke and blood at the sanctuary, though only for a breath before chaos swallowed him. Garen. The traitor. He was thinner than I remembered, with a narrow face and old oath scars crawling up the side of his neck like roots from poisoned soil. One arm was bandaged beneath his coat. He looked at me as if I were not a woman, but a lover. I had met that look before. I was tired of it. Marius glanced at the dress in Mila's hands. Is the gown repaired? Mila bowed her head. Nearly, Alpha. Nearly is a servant's word for failure. I smiled. Then you must hear it often. Cassian would have struck me. Marius only looked amused. That was the trouble with men who enjoyed patience. They made cruelty feel like weather. Garen stepped closer, his gaze fixed on my self-claiming mark. So, this is the one, he said. I am many things. Be specific. His mouth twisted. The woman Riven will damn himself for. No, I am the woman he had better not. A flicker passed through his eyes. Marius noticed it too. You speak as if you know him, Marius said. I know enough. Garen laughed quietly. You know the sanctuary version. The penitent rogue, the savior with blood on his hands and women at his feet. I moved before anger could move me. 1 step. No more. Careful, I said. Your jealousy is showing. His laugh died. Marius's smile returned. There it was. Men with old wounds hated being seen clearly. They preferred fear, reverence, confusion. Anything but a woman looking at them and naming the smallness beneath their violence. Garen's voice lowered. Seren begged him. The room tightened. Annika's fingers whitened around the pitcher handle. Mila's needle stopped. Rowena went very still. I did not let myself blink. Garen wanted horror, doubt, a crack he could widen until Riven arrived and found me already poisoned against him. But Seren was not theirs to use. Not anymore. I do not need you to tell me what dead women suffered. I said. Living men do enough of that. Garen's face hardened. Marius stepped between us with a soft sigh. Riven chose power once. Tomorrow he will choose again. Then why are you afraid of who watches? The smile faded from Marius's eyes. Good. I pressed. If the old law is on your side, fill the hall with men and let them clap. Why worry about servants, debt women, girls carrying coal? Why does a dead woman's carving trouble you? Marius came close enough for me to smell clove on his breath. You mistake noise for power. No, I said. I mistake nothing. That is why you dislike me. His gaze dropped to my throat. For one moment I thought he would touch the mark. I hoped he would. I wanted the basin in my hands and his skull within reach. But Marius Vale had survived too long by sensing blades before they were drawn. He stepped back. Noon, he said, under the moon arch. You will wear the dress. I will ruin it beautifully. You will stand where I put you. I smiled. Men keep saying that. Garen lingered as Marius turned for the door. His eyes were flat now, empty in the way a cup became empty after poison had done its work. He will use the oath, he said. If you bleed enough, he will. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I said, that sounds like what you need to believe. The hit landed, not on his body. Better. His jaw tightened, and for a heartbeat the old oath scars along his neck seemed darker. Marius noticed. Again. The door shut behind them. The lock turned. No one breathed until the footsteps faded. Then Annika whispered, He knows. Yes, I said. Milla's voice shook. Then we stop? No. Rowena gave me a hard look. Girl. I am done being warned by women who already know I'm right. That made her mouth close. Not because I'd won. Because she had. I took the red dress from Milla's lap and ripped a narrow strip from the inside lining. No one gasped this time. We were past that. Cole, I said. Annika moved quickly, scraping black dust from the hearth into my palm. I mixed it with water until it became ink thick enough to stain. What message? Rowena asked. I crouched by the bedpost and wrote on the strip slowly, each word small enough to hide beneath a seam. Women are waiting. Do not. Command. Mila stared at it. That has to reach him before noon. It will, Rowena said. We all looked at her. She folded the strip with careful fingers. Old Tavia's nephew runs scraps to the outer kennels before dawn. Guards never search him because he smells like dog fat and bad decisions. Can he be trusted? No, Rowena said, but he owes me more than he fears them. That was not trust. That was better. She tucked the strip beneath her sleeve. Then footsteps stopped outside the door. Not passing. Waiting. Annika grabbed the pitcher. Mila snatched up the dress. Rowena lowered her arm as the latch began to lift. And I stood in the middle of the bridal chamber, throat marked, hands empty, while Graceire opened another door it should have kept shut. The door opened on a woman built from keys. They hung from her belt in iron bunches, chiming with each step as if Graceire had given its cages a voice and taught that voice to walk. She wore black wool, a pinched mouth, and the satisfied posture of someone who had spent years mistaking obedience for virtue. Behind her stood 2 guards. Behind them, Cassian. Of course. The woman looked at me first, then at the ruined dress, then at Rowena's lowered sleeves. Hands, she said. Rowena obeyed too quickly. The strip was still tucked somewhere near her wrist. I moved before fear could teach anyone honesty. I picked up the red ceremonial gown and tore the left sleeve from shoulder to cuff. Mila made a sound like a soul leaving the body. The woman with keys whipped around. What did you do? Improved it. Cassian's eyes narrowed. Flavia. I held up the torn sleeve. If Graceire wants me dressed like a sacrifice, at least make the costume interesting. The key woman crossed the room and snatched the fabric from me. I am Matron Aveline. You will address me with respect. I will address you when you become useful. One guard coughed. Cassian looked at him. The cough died. Aveline's mouth tightened. Alpha Marius wants you prepared for the hearing. Washed, dressed, presentable. I am present. You are stained. I am marked. Her gaze dropped to my throat, where blood, ash, and bitterroot ink had dried to the self-claiming cut. Disgust flickered across her face. Good. Let it look at freedom and choke. That will be covered, she said. No. Cassian stepped into the room. You do not decide that. I looked at him. I decided worse things than cloth while bleeding through your father's trap. His jaw worked once. Aveline turned to Milla. Repair it. Milla's needle trembled between two fingers. Yes, matron. Properly this time. It was repaired properly, I said. Then it met my opinion. Aveline ignored me and pointed toward Rowena and Annika. You two, out. The kitchen needs hands before the alphas arrive. Rowena lowered her head. Too much. Too careful. I wanted to tell her not to overplay fear, but the warning would only paint a target. So I let my temper do what it had always done best. Distract men and their women who served them. Alphas, I said, tasting the word. How many are coming to watch Graceire call kidnapping a hearing? Cassian smiled. Enough. How reassuring. A crowd of cowards always makes law look festive. Aveline's keys snapped against her hip as she turned. You will learn silence before noon. I had silence. Graceire sold it. Rowena passed the threshold. Annika followed with the water pitcher. Neither looked back. Good girls. Smart girls. Alive girls, if spite loved me enough. The door shut behind them. The lock turned. And the bride cage held me again. Aveline stayed to supervise the dress. That was meant to frighten me. It only gave me another thing to count. She favored her right knee. Her keys sat on the left side. She did not trust the guards near the vanity tray, which meant something sharp had been hidden there once before. She flinched every time Cassian spoke, though she hid it beneath disapproval. Everyone in Graceire had a wound. Some had simply built uniforms around theirs. Milla bent over the dress and stitched along the torn sleeve. Needle in, needle out. Not as decoration now. As a language. 2 tight knots near the cuff. East Stair watched. 1 loose thread near the hem. Weak latch. 3 cross-stitches hidden beneath silver moons. Lower rooms. Aveline saw fabric. I saw a map. When she stepped to the hearth to warm her hands, Milla whispered without moving her lips. The moon chamber connects to kitchens. My pulse sharpened. How? Salt cupboard. Back wall swings inward. Old servant passage. No one uses it since the stones shifted. Usable? For thin people. Frightened people become thin when needed. I almost smiled. Lower rooms? Beneath the east cellar. Debt women locked before transfer. Key held by Oral. Can he be bought? No, but he hates Cassian. Useful hatred? His sister was sent south after Cassian tired of her. There it was. A wound with legs. Tell Oral noon is his chance to hate loudly, I whispered. Milla's needle paused only once, then continued. Aveline turned back and Milla became a seamstress again. The door opened after the 3rd bell. A young woman entered with a basket of pins and pressed cloth. She was not one I knew. Her deep brown face was smooth with terror, but her hands rested too often at her middle beneath the apron. pregnant, hiding it badly from anyone who had ever learned to survive by noticing. Aveline said, "Tala, leave it there." Tala kept her eyes lowered and set the basket near the chair. I said, "How long?" She froze. Aveline frowned. "What?" I reached into the basket and lifted a bent pin. "How long has Graceire been too poor to afford straight pins?" Aveline snatched it from me. "Do not speak to servants. They are the only tolerable people here." Tala's mouth twitched, then went still. Later, when Aveline crossed to scold the guards for speaking in the hall, Tala leaned near the hem. "Old Tavia says the message is too long," she breathed. Rowena had reached the kitchen. "Good. Alive." My throat tightened with relief I had no time to enjoy. "How much can go?" 3 words, maybe 4, if the boy is stupid. "He is?" "Very." "Then 3. Tala's hand covered the place where life hid beneath rough cloth. I lowered my voice. "Can you reach the lower rooms?" "No." "Can you reach someone who can?" "Oral eats in the scullery before noon." "Tell him the East Cellar women move when the bells ring wrong." Her eyes widened. "What bells?" "The ones old Tavia will ring when she remembers she likes silver." Tala swallowed. "If you are scared," I said, "be useful while you shake." Her fingers pressed against the basket. "I am always scared." "Then you are already practiced." Aveline returned. Tala bowed and left with steps too quick to be innocent, but Aveline was watching me, not her. Men taught their households to watch the threat with the loud mouth. They never learned quiet hands moved faster. Cassian came back alone near dusk. No Aveline, no guards inside the room. Just him, his pride, and the door closing behind him. I was wearing the red dress now. Milla had repaired it badly, in every perfect place. One sleeve sat uneven. The hem dragged near my left foot. A hidden thread brushed my ankle like a secret. Cassian looked me over. Not with desire first, with resentment. That suited him better. "You were supposed to be mine," he said. I laughed before I could stop myself. "You rejected me in front of half the pack." I was angry. "You were alpha-born. Same illness, different decoration." His expression hardened. "Father says after the hearing, if Riven refuses to claim you, Graceire can correct the record." "Correct?" "A second claim." My skin went hot beneath the dress. Not fear alone. Rage. "Yours?" I asked. Cassian came closer. "Who else knows you better?" "Every stranger who has ever left me alone." He lifted his hand. I did not step back. That annoyed him too. His fingers stopped near my throat, just short of the mark. "I can cover this." "No." "I can mark over it." "No." His voice softened into cruelty. Rejected. The pain came. Sharp, old, obscene in its familiarity. My body wanted to fight it the way it always had, with teeth, with mockery, with a smile hard enough to draw blood from my own pride. I felt the old performance rising. Look untouched. Look above it. Do not give him proof. Then I understood. The bond pain fed on that performance, on denial, on making me exhaust myself, proving I was not hurt by a wound designed to hurt me. So I stopped. I let one hand press against my ribs. I let my breath catch. Cassian's eyes lit. "Yes," I said quietly. "It hurts." His smile faltered. I looked at him without armor for one deliberate second. Not broken. Not begging. Honest. "You wanted that? There. It hurt then. It hurts now. And it still did not make me yours." His face changed. He had wanted a wall to strike. I gave him a door he was not invited through. "You think admitting weakness makes you strong?" "No," I said. I think pretending pain is nothing gives men like you too much credit. He grabbed my wrist. I looked down at his hand, then back at him. You rejected me, I said. That was the last choice you ever made about my body. For a heartbeat, I thought he would strike. Instead, he released me with a shove that barely moved me and stepped back toward the door. At noon, he said, voice rough, Riven will show you what men do when something precious is taken. I smoothed the crooked sleeve. If he listens, he will show you what men do when women are trusted. Cassian left. The lock turned. I waited until his footsteps faded. Only then did I exhale. Tala returned after the last kitchen bell with an oil pot and a strip of cloth no larger than 2 fingers. Mila blocked the view from the door by fussing with the hem. Aveline had gone to report that I was dressed. Rowena had not returned, which meant she was either safe or already moving pieces I could no longer see. Tala handed me a sliver of charcoal. 3 words, she whispered. I did not ask if the kennel boy was brave. Bravery was unreliable. Debt was better. I wrote small. Not everything Riven needed. Only what would stop him from giving Marius the victory, dressed as rescue. Do not charge. Tala folded the cloth into the oil pot's false bottom. Her hands shook. I covered them with mine for one breath. Not comfort. Permission to keep shaking and move anyway. Go, I said. She went. The bride cage closed around me again. Red silk, locked door, watching walls. Beyond it, kitchens breathed. The lower rooms listened. Servants counted. Women waited. By dawn, if old Tavia's nephew had legs, greed, and enough sense to follow a road, 3 words would reach the sanctuary before Riven reached Graceire. Do not charge. Do not charge. Those 3 words followed me into dawn. They sat beneath my tongue while Matron Aveline yanked the red dress tight at my ribs. They beat behind my teeth when she tried to pin a strip of lace over the mark at my throat, and I caught her wrist hard enough to make her think better of it. Touch it again, I said, and you will need fewer fingers for your keys. Her mouth pinched so deeply, I wondered if it hurt. Good. Pain made people attentive. By the time the first horn sounded, Graceire had dressed itself as law. Banners hung from the upper windows. Servants scrubbed the courtyard stones where blood had dried from smaller cruelties no one had held a hearing for. Men moved benches beneath the old moon arch, each plank polished, each seat arranged by rank, as if order could make rot respectable. From the bridal chamber window, I watched them arrive. Northern alphas rode through Graceire's gate in dark coats and heavy rings, their wolves carried in their shoulders, their importance announced before their names. Some were old, some young. All wore the same expression when they looked at Marius Vale's house. Calculation. Not justice. Never justice. Cassian entered after the second horn with 2 guards at his back. He smiled when he saw me. That was his first mistake of the day. You look almost presentable. I am sorry your standards survived the night. His gaze dropped to my self-claiming mark. It showed above the red silk, dark against my deep brown skin, ugly to anyone who needed obedience to be pretty. You should have let Aveline cover that. You should have learned to leave after rejection. We all disappoint each other. One guard hid a laugh behind a cough. Cassian turned his head. The guard remembered his neck was attached to his body and went silent. Cassian stepped close enough for the old bond to stir, mean and waiting. He wanted to press the bruise again. I could see it in the curl of his fingers. I breathed once. Slowly. If it hurts, it hurts. I would not waste strength pretending the blade was not sharp. He must have seen that I was no longer willing to perform for him, because his smile thinned. Riven will come, he said. He had better walk. Cassian frowned. Good. Let him wonder. The guards took my arms. I let them. Not because I was harmless. Because every woman we passed needed to see my eyes open. Rowena stood near the stair with a basket of folded linens. She did not look at me. The edge of one cloth hung loose over her wrist. Message delivered or failed. No way to know. Tala passed below with a tray of cups, one hand brushing her hidden stomach. Mila knelt by a torn runner near the hall, needle flashing once, twice, 3 times. Signals everywhere. Graceire had spent years training women to move unseen. That was generous of it. At the bottom of the east stair, 2 guards stood where Mila's knots had promised. One leaned on his left leg. One kept touching the ring of keys at his belt. Oral. His eyes slid to me for half a breath, then away. Hatred could be shy before noon. The moon arch stood in the central courtyard, carved from old stone veined dark as dried storms. I had seen smaller versions in ritual chambers, places where men named rejection sacred because they had never been the ones left kneeling afterward. They brought me beneath it. Not to a chair, not to a place among people, to a marked circle on the stone. Evidence had no seat. Marius waited at the center, broad-shouldered, iron thread through his beard, calm as a knife laid carefully on cloth. Around him sat the northern alphas. Behind them, guards. Behind the guards, servants pressed along walls, pretending not to listen. But they listened. Women in aprons. Women with bruised wrists. Women with shaved hope and hidden blades. Women from the lower rooms, too, at least 4 of them, faces drawn, bodies wrapped in servant shawls that did not belong to them. Someone had opened a door before time. Old Tavia, maybe. Or Oral's hatred had found its legs. Marius lifted one hand and the courtyard quieted. Graceire calls this conclave to answer theft, trespass, and unlawful sheltering, he said. His voice carried beautifully. Men like him always learned how to sound reasonable while building cages. The rogue alpha known as Riven has entered Northern Territory without recognition, gathered packless women under no lawful charter, and stolen property under Graceire debt. Property. The word landed exactly where he meant it to. On me. I smiled because if I did not, I might spit. An older alpha with a fox fur collar leaned forward. The woman is the debt? Marius inclined his head. Flavia Underwood. Rejected by Cassian Vale. Retained under family debt. Transferred by right of settlement. Removed unlawfully from Graceire custody. Sold, I said. The guards tightened around me. Marius did not look away from the alphas. Debts are settled by recognized authority. Then put a prettier coat on it, I said. It will still smell like a sale. Murmurs moved through the benches. Cassian stood near his father, jaw tight. Marius smiled without warmth. You will have the opportunity to speak when called. I have never waited well. That earned a sharp breath from Branca. My heart jolted. I turned before I could stop myself. They were at the gate. Not charging. Standing. Riven came first. He looked like death had argued with him and lost out of spite. His face was drawn, his scar stark, his dark hair tied at his nape. Beneath his coat, bandages thickened one side of his torso. Every step cost him. I saw it in the set of his shoulders, the tight control around his mouth. But he was upright. He was here. And he had not brought an army. He had brought witnesses. Mara stood at his right, all black leather and quiet blades. Nessa at his left, silver-threaded braids pinned back, healer's hands empty and more dangerous for it. Sabine came behind with flour still ghosting the creases of her knuckles. Branca walked as if she personally intended to insult the law until it died of shame. Eilis, Sella, Celeste, and more sanctuary women followed. Not behind Riven like property. Beside him, like Answer. Celeste's face was tight, bruising still fading along her jaw. When her eyes found mine, she did not beg forgiveness. Good. This was not the place for it. Marius's expression did not change, but something in the courtyard did. The women along the walls lifted their heads. One by one. Aveline saw it and went stiff. Riven's eyes found me. For half a breath, everything loud in me went still. Then his gaze dropped to my throat, to the mark uncovered. Something moved through his face. Not relief. Reverence, maybe. Or pain learning not to take up all the room. Marius turned toward him. Rogue Alpha. You stand accused of stealing Graceire property and harboring it without claim. Riven's voice was rough, but it carried. I stole nothing. You took the woman. She came with me. She was unclaimed. Riven looked at Marius for a long moment. Then he said, Correct. I do not claim her. The courtyard broke into noise. Alphas muttered. Guards shifted. Cassian's head snapped toward him, disbelief bright and ugly. Marius had expected denial. Possession. A wolf snarling over a prize. Riven gave him empty hands. I stepped forward before the guards could remember I was meant to stay put. That is the point. Every eye turned to me. My skin prickled beneath the red dress. The circle under my feet felt like a brand waiting to be accepted. I would not accept it. I lifted my chin and touched the self-claiming mark at my throat. This was made by my hand, my blood, my will. No alpha stood over me. No pack priest blessed it. No man decided I had earned personhood by surviving his teeth. The fox-collared alpha sneered. Women cannot claim themselves under northern law. Then northern law is duller than it looks. A few of the servants made small sounds. Not laughter. Not yet. Hope clearing its throat. Marius said softly, Careful. I looked at him. No. The word traveled farther than it should have. No, I said again. I was rejected and called ruined, sold and called debt, hunted and called runaway, dragged here and called evidence, all because your laws cannot imagine a woman standing without a man's mark on her skin. Cassian's face darkened. I faced the benches. If a woman can be rejected, sold, hunted, and called property because no man has marked her, then your law is not order. It is hunger with bad handwriting. Silence hit hard. I felt Riven behind it. Not rescuing me. Not interrupting. Letting me stand. That mattered more than any blade he could have drawn. Nessa's voice came from the gate, clear as bitter medicine. We witness. Mara said, We witness. Then Sabine. Branca. Celeste. The women along the walls began to answer too. Quiet at first, then stronger. We witness. Marius's calm cracked. Only a little. Enough. Then a laugh cut through the courtyard. Thin. Familiar. Poisoned. Garen stepped from beneath the side arch, bandaged arm held close, old oath scars crawling along his neck. The guards parted for him because they had been told to. Because this was not an interruption. This was design. He pointed at Riven. You speak of law while hiding murder, he called. Ask your rogue what he did to Seren. The sanctuary women went still. Riven did not move. Garen smiled. I accuse Riven of oath murder before this conclave. Let him answer under the old trial. Let the oath itself judge him. Marius looked at me then, and smiled. Not because the trap had sprung, because it had been waiting beneath the floor the whole time. It had been waiting beneath the floor the whole time. Not the accusation. The audience. Marius had not dragged me under the moon arch to prove I was property. That was only the bait with prettier stitching. He had gathered the northern alphas to watch Riven either lie, command, or break. Garen stood in the open courtyard wearing his old hatred like a second coat. Let him answer, he called. Old oath, old trial, unless the rogue fears what truth sounds like when law has teeth. The alphas stirred, not outraged, interested, Men loved justice most when it promised blood. Riven did not look at Garen first. He looked at me. Only once. Long enough for me to see the strain in him. The wolfsbane wound had stolen color from his mouth and steadiness from his breath. His right hand hung loose at his side, but the fingers twitched once, as if some old command remembered the shape of them. Then he looked away. Good. If he was going to stand in the truth, he could not use me as a doorway out of it. Marius lifted a hand. The courtyard quieted by instinct. Even the servants along the wall went still, though I saw Rowena's eyes sharpen and Tala's hand press flat beneath her apron. Riven of no recognized territory, Marius said, voice rich with ceremony. You are accused before conclave of oath murder. Do you deny trial? Mara shifted one step forward. Riven stopped her without touching, without command. Just a glance. No, he said. The word landed heavily. Garen smiled. Cassian did too. Fools always mistake willingness for defeat. The fox-collared alpha leaned forward. Oath murder is not a small charge. If proven, the rogue loses claim to shelter, witness, and life. He has no claim, I said. Several eyes swung toward me. I smiled without warmth. We established that. Keep up. Marius's gaze cut to the guards at my sides. Their hands tightened. I let them. Riven's voice came again, rougher. Let the charge be spoken. Garen walked into the marked circle opposite him. His narrow face gleamed with satisfaction. Old oath scars climbed his neck, faded but not gone, ugly little memories carved into skin. Seren was your mate, Garen said. Riven's jaw tightened. Yes. You swore a dominance oath before the old pack. Yes. You took command meant for alphas alone. Yes. The simple answers began to change the air. Garen had expected resistance, argument, perhaps denial sharp enough to cut open. Riven gave him stone. You bound men's wills to yours, Garen pressed. You broke challengers. You made the pack kneel. Yes. A murmur moved through the benches. Nessa's face was hard as winter roots. Celeste stared at the ground, both hands curled at her sides. Garen's smile widened, and Seren begged you to release it. Riven closed his eyes. For one breath I wanted to step in, not to defend him, to stop Garen from handling Seren's name with filthy hands. But this was not my confession, and dead women had carried enough for living men. Riven opened his eyes. Yes. That answer did what the others had not. It cut him. I saw it. So did everyone. He did not flinch from the wound. Garen's expression flickered. He wanted a monster. Monsters were easier to hate than men who named their sins before anyone dragged them out. Tell them, Garen snapped. Tell them how she died. Riven stood beneath the arch with blood darkening the edge of his bandage, and truth doing what Wolfsbane could not. I did not strike Seren, he said. I did not order her death. Cassian scoffed. Riven did not look at him. But I chose the oath that killed her. Silence fell so quickly even the horses beyond the gate seemed to hear it. Riven's voice lowered, but it carried. She told me the command was eating through the bond. She told me power taken that way demanded payment. I thought I could hold both, mate and oath, love and dominion. I thought wanting to protect her made me different from men who wanted to own. His eyes moved to the women along the walls. Not asking forgiveness. Worse, admitting where forgiveness could not reach. I was wrong. The words stripped something from him. No performance. No noble self-hatred polished for pity. Just truth, ugly and bare. I felt the bond tearing, he said. I felt what it cost her. And still, when the choice came, I held the oath. I told myself the pack needed control. I told myself enemies were near. I told myself I would release it when it was safe. His mouth twisted. It is never safe enough for men who love power. Branka made a low sound behind him. Not agreement, exactly. Recognition. Riven continued. Seren died because I chose command when I should have chosen her. I built a sanctuary over that death and called it penance. I gathered women harmed by men like me and thought restraint could balance the scale. Nessa's voice cut through the courtyard, quiet and merciless. Dead women are not scales. Riven bowed his head. Yes. No one spoke, not even Marius. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked uncertain of where the room had gone. Garen stepped closer. Pretty words. Always pretty with you. You confess enough to look clean and hide the rest. Riven lifted his head. There is no clean pot. Garen's face hardened. She begged. I know. She bled from the mouth calling your name. Riven's hand curled. The air pressed down. Small at first. Then suddenly, my knees felt it. The old instinct in my blood. Wolf to stronger wolf. Body to command. Around the courtyard, men stiffened. One servant gasped and dropped a cup. A guard near the gate bent half an inch before catching himself. The oath was waking. Not in triumph. In pain. Garen saw it and smiled like a starving thing finding meat. There, he whispered. There you are. Riven's eyes darkened. Mara reached for a blade. Nessa said sharply, Riven. Garen leaned in. Flavia will die because you have become weak. Marius will carve his law into her throat. Cassian will put his teeth where her mark is and call it correction. Use it. Command them. Make them kneel. Save one woman better than you saved Seren. The pressure deepened. Aveline dropped to one knee with a choked sound. One of the northern alphas swore. My bones knew the command before my pride could refuse it. Every old law in the blood told me to lower my head. I did not. I locked my knees and stood. Riven's gaze found mine, wild with restraint. He was asking without words. Not permission to save me. Permission to become the thing Graceire needed him to be. I spoke quietly. So quietly, I was not sure anyone else would hear. Do not make my life another excuse for power. The pressure shuddered. Riven looked as if I had struck him. Then he breathed. Once. Twice. The air loosened. He turned from me to the conclave. To answer the old trial, he said, voice raw. I call witnesses. Marius moved. You do not command this proceeding. No, Riven said. I renounce command. Nessa stepped forward then, holding something wrapped in dark cloth. A stone rubbing. I knew before she opened it. Not because I had seen Seren's grave, but because grief had a shape, and this one had followed Riven all the way to Graceire. Nessa unrolled the cloth. Charcoal marks showed carved words. If the oath survives him, break it where women witness. The courtyard held its breath. Riven looked at the words, then at the women. Not the alphas first. Us. I renounce the dominance oath, he said. Nothing happened. For one cruel heartbeat, I thought old law would refuse him, because freedom had too many women watching. Then, the mark appeared. Black lines rose beneath the skin at Riven's collar, crawling from his chest up the side of his throat. Not ink, not scar. Oath. Alive and angry. Riven staggered. Mara caught one arm. He shook her off. I renounce the right to bind will to mine. The lines burned red. Smoke lifted from his skin. Someone screamed. I did not know who. Perhaps more than one of us. Riven's knees buckled, but he forced himself upright again. I renounce command taken by blood, fear, or vow. The old power broke outward. Not like wind. like chains snapping in a room no one had known they were standing inside. Several men shouted and clutched their throats. Garen collapsed to one knee, oath scars splitting open in thin red lines. The guards nearest Riven stumbled backward as if their own bodies had been returned late and badly. Riven bared his teeth against the pain. One more. I knew it. So did he. He looked toward Siren's rubbing. I renounce the lie that love can be proven by possession. The burning mark tore free. Light cracked across his throat, then vanished. Riven fell. Mara caught him this time, and he had no strength left to refuse. For a breath, no one moved. Then the women's voices rose. Not loud. Not organized. Stronger than both. We witness. Nessa said it first. We witness. Sabine. Bronca. Celeste. Rowena at the wall. Tala with her hand over the life she was hiding. Milla somewhere behind a servant's shawl. Women from Graceire. Women from the sanctuary. We witness. Marius's face had changed completely. The patient cruelty was gone. Beneath it was panic. Raw, exposed, furious. Because he had not brought the conclave to watch Riven confess. He had brought them to watch Riven fail. And Riven had broken the weapon Marius needed him to use. Marius turned sharply to his guards. His voice cracked like a whip. Seal the gates. The courtyard jolted awake. Alphas stood. Chairs scraped stone. Cassian drew his blade. Marius pointed at Riven, then at me. No one leaves Graceire, he ordered. Kill the witnesses. For half a breath, Graceire obeyed. Steel came free. Guards surged from the archways. The northern alphas shouted over one another, too startled to remember law had only ever been a mask with teeth behind it. Then the wrong bell rang. Not the great courtyard bell. The kitchen bell. 3 sharp strikes. A pause. 2 more. Old Tavia had remembered she liked silver. The sound cut through the courtyard like a knife through rope, and every frightened woman in Graceire became useful at once. A servant dropped a tray near the west stairs. Cups shattered beneath charging boots. Oil spread over polished stone. A guard slipped, went down hard, and Annika, small, bruised-wristed Annika, kicked his blade under the bench with both feet. One of the men holding my arms turned his head. Mistake. I drove my heel down on his instep and slammed the back of my skull into his mouth. Pain burst through me bright and hot, but his grip loosened. I twisted, caught the second guard's wrist, and bit him where glove met skin. He shouted. I spat blood. Mine, I told him, and took his knife. Across the courtyard, Mara moved like judgment that had been sharpening itself for years. She put herself between Riven and the first wave of Graceire men, blades flashing low and fast. Riven tried to stand without help, stubborn even when half dead, but Nessa shoved him behind a stone bench with both healers' hands, and no patience. Bleed later, she snapped. Mara cut down the man reaching for Nessa before he touched cloth. Elise joined her from the left, grin sharp as broken glass, swinging a stolen mace she had no proper business enjoying so much. Your side, Elise called. Mara ducked beneath a sword and opened a man's thigh. Try to keep one. I like both. Then earn them. They fought back to back after that. Not pretty. Better. The sanctuary women had not come as an army. They had come as witnesses. Graceire taught them, very quickly, that witnesses could carry knives. Sabine vanished toward the kitchens with 3 women behind her, skirts gathered, faces set. A breath later, smoke began to curl from the lower passage. Not fire, not enough to burn the house, but enough to blind the men who thought servant doors led only to meals. The east cellar doors opened. At first I heard only the scrape of iron, then voices. Women poured from beneath Graceire, wrapped in servant shawls, old blankets, torn ceremonial cloth, whatever hands had found in the dark. Some limped, some carried others. One had blood on her temple and a butcher's hook in her fist. Aurel appeared behind them with keys in one hand and a murder in his eyes. Cassian saw him. Traitor! Aurel's face twisted. My sister's name was Lena. Then the seller swallowed him again, dragging 2 guards down with him. Good hatred. Useful hatred. A ceremonial spear rack stood near the arch, polished for display, never meant for real hands. Branka reached it first. She took 1 spear, tested the weight, and laughed. Oh, she said, you fools are decorated with answers. The first man rushed her. Branka put the spear through his shoulder and pinned him to the moon arch, long enough to take another weapon. By the time 2 more guards reached her, she had turned Graceire's pretty symbols into a harvest. A man tried to crawl away from her. She stepped on his wrist. Rejected women are property, are we? She asked. He whimpered. She hit him with the butt of the spear. That was a legal correction. I would have loved her forever if there had been time. There was not. Marius was shouting orders from the central dais, his composure gone, his wolf close beneath his skin. The northern alphas had split between outrage and self-preservation. Some drew blades against Graceire. Some backed toward the locked gates and realized too late that Marius had trapped them inside his own treachery. Riven was on his feet again. Of course he was. Blood had soaked through his bandage. The oath mark was gone from his throat, but the absence looked almost like another wound. He met Marius across the chaos, and something silent passed between them. Not command. Challenge. Marius smiled like he had been waiting for a wounded man. I started toward Riven. Cassian got there first. Not to him. To me. He came through smoke and shouting with his blade drawn, face twisted beyond pride into something uglier. The bond pain struck before he touched me, a hook beneath the ribs, dragging old humiliation behind it. My knees bent. I hated that. I hated him for knowing exactly where the wound lived. He grabbed my hair near the nape and yanked me backward. Pain flashed across my scalp. I slashed with the stolen knife, but he caught my wrist and slammed it against the stone arch. The knife fell. Still quick, he breathed near my ear. Still not quick enough. I drove my elbow back. He grunted but held on. Around us the battle roared. A Graceire woman stumbled past, carrying a child no older than 3. Celeste caught the attacker behind them with both hands and drove a short blade under his ribs. The woman turned, recognized Celeste, and spat full in her face. Celeste froze for 1 heartbeat, then wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. Fair. She lifted the child higher into the woman's arms and pushed them toward Sabine's smoke-filled passage. Keep moving. Then she turned and put herself between them and the next guard. No one forgave her. She fought anyway. Cassian dragged me toward the inner hall. I kicked, twisted, clawed at his hand, but the old bond stabbed again. Stronger this time, because he was close and furious, and still believed rejection gave him a leash. We crashed through a side door into the old moon corridor. Cool air swallowed the noise behind us, though battle still shook the walls. The corridor smelled of dust, stone, and old flowers left to rot after ceremonies no woman had chosen freely. I knew where he was taking me before the carved doors appeared. The moon chamber. Of course. Men like Cassian always returned to the room where they thought they had become powerful. He shoved me inside. I hit the floor on one hip and rolled before his boot came down where my stomach had been. The chamber was round, windowless, lit by hanging silver lamps. Chains from old mate ceremonies draped the walls, decorative now if one believed anything made for restraint could become decoration. At the center stood a low altar with a bowl of ash, a strip of red cloth, and a ritual blade resting in a groove worn by years of obedient blood. My throat mark burned. Cassian shut the door. The sound was small, final in the way cages pretended to be. "You made them look at me," he said. I pushed to my feet. "You do that yourself." He stalked closer. "You stood beneath my family's arch and called me nothing." "I called your law hunger. If you heard your name, that is between you and your appetite." His fist caught my mouth. Pain snapped my head sideways. Blood warmed my tongue. For a second, everything inside me went still. Not empty. Focused. Cassian's chest heaved. "You think Riven will save you?" "I think you are frightened. He will not need to." The bond struck again. Harder. It dropped me to one knee before I could stop it. Old rejection tearing through my ribs, my back, my throat. It was not only magic, it was memory, sharpened into a weapon. The hall. The watching faces. Cassian's voice saying I was not enough. My own shame trying to crawl back into the shape Graceire had made for it. Cassian crouched before me, satisfied. "There you are." I breathed through the pain. Then I looked up at him. "Yes," I said. His smile faltered. "Yes. That hurt me." My voice shook. I let it. "And it still did not make me yours." His face changed the way spoiled meat changes in heat. He lunged. I moved left, grabbed a handful of ash from the bowl, and flung it into his eyes. Cassian roared. I ran for the altar. He caught the back of my red dress and tore it nearly to the waist. Fabric ripped. I twisted out of it, leaving him with silk in his fist and fury in his mouth. He slammed into me from behind. We hit the altar together. My ribs screamed. His hand closed around my throat, thumb pressing beside my self-claiming mark. "I will correct it," he snarled, half-blind, reaching for the ritual blade. "I will put my mark over yours, and every alpha out there will watch you belong." My fingers closed around the blade first. Steel bit my palm. Blood slicked the hilt. I turned beneath him, teeth bared. "Try." Cassian did. He came at my throat with his teeth bared. The ritual blade trapped between our bodies, my blood slick on the hilt, and his breath hot with rage. I drove my knee up into his ribs. He grunted, but he did not let go. His hand crushed down beside my self-claiming mark, thumb digging into the place he wanted erased. The rejection bond tore through me again, vicious and familiar, a hook buried deep in old shame. I shook under it. Not because I was weak, because pain was pain. Cassian smiled when he felt me tremble. "There she is?" I smiled back with blood in my teeth. "You keep saying that like you found something." Then I slammed the ritual blade into his side. Not deep enough. Not clean enough. But enough. He howled and staggered away, one hand flying to the wound. I rolled off the altar and hit the stone floor hard. My palm burned where the blade had bitten me. My mouth throbbed. My torn red dress hung from one shoulder, useless as ceremony had always been. Cassian looked down at the blood spreading beneath his fingers. For one breath, he seemed honestly offended, as if I had broken etiquette by hurting him back. "You cut me." I was aiming for something important. His face twisted. He lunged again. The moon chamber gave me what Graceire had always given women, weapons disguised as decoration. I snatched one of the old ceremony chains from the wall and swung it low. The heavy iron caught Cassian across the knees. He crashed forward, catching himself on one hand. I kicked the ash bowl over, sending gray dust across the floor, then drove my heel into his bandaged side. He grabbed my ankle. I went down. The back of my head struck stone, and sparks flashed across my vision. Cassian dragged me toward him, fingers biting into my calf. The bond pain surged with him, angry and alive, and for a moment I was back in the rejection hall with every eye on my failure. No, not failure. Burial. There was a difference. He climbed over me, half blind from ash, bleeding from his side, Still strong because men like Cassian had been fed strength from birth and told it was character. "You were nothing before I rejected you," he snarled. The words landed. They should have split me. Once they would have. I looked up at him and remembered the girl I had been, standing in that hall, waiting for mercy from a man who had none. I remembered thinking rejection had made me small, thinking humiliation had been proof. But the seeds were small too. So were sparks. "No," I said. "I was buried. There is a difference." His fist came down. I caught his wrist with both hands and turned into the blow instead of away from it. Bone cracked. I did not know whose. Pain screamed up my arm, but his balance broke. I twisted the chain around his forearm and yanked hard, pulling him sideways into the altar. His head struck the stone edge with a wet sound. He sagged, only for a heartbeat. Cassian had always been too proud to stay down when there was still a woman refusing him. He shoved himself upright, blood running into one eye. "I will mark you." "No." "I will fix what you made of yourself." "No." "I will make them see you were mine first." I laughed then. It hurt my ribs. It was still worth it. "You were first at nothing." He roared and reached for the ritual blade where it had skidded beneath the altar. I reached for broken glass. One of the silver lamps had cracked when we hit the altar. Shards glittered near my hand. I grabbed the largest piece and slashed upward as he bent. Glass opened his cheek from mouth to jaw. His scream filled the round chamber. Outside, battle thundered beyond the door. Steel, smoke, women's voices. A world breaking open while Cassian and I fought over the last chain he thought remained between us. He struck me again. My shoulder hit the wall. The chains there clattered around me like old ghosts cheering badly. Cassian came forward, blade in hand now, shaking with fury. "You think one mark makes you free?" "No," I said, pushing myself upright. "I made myself free. The mark was just a witness." His gaze dropped to my throat, to the blood, to the dark line of my own choosing. Then he moved faster than I expected. He caught the torn front of my dress, dragged me close, and pressed the ritual blade under my chin. His mouth lowered toward my neck. Not a kiss. Not even hunger. Correction. That was all he had ever wanted, to turn my body into proof that he had not lost. The rejection bond struck one final time, sharper than before. It dragged every old humiliation with it, every whispered pity, every debt mark, every night I had mistaken survival for obedience. This time, I did not shove the pain away. I held it, named it, let it stand where it belonged. Between us. "You rejected me," I whispered. His lips brushed near my mark. "You threw me away." His teeth grazed my skin. "And still thought you could decide where I landed." His hand tightened around the blade. I brought my bleeding palm up between us and pressed it flat to the ritual edge. The chamber changed. Not loudly. The old magic in the blade woke like something disturbed from a long, rotten sleep. Cassian froze. I felt the thread then. Not a chain of love. Never that. A cruel little remnant tied from his rejection to my wound, kept alive by law that believed men should always leave a handle on what they discarded. I closed my hand around the blade. Blood ran between my fingers. Cassian's eyes widened. "Don't." That was the sweetest word he had ever given me. I looked straight at him. "I reject your rejection." Then I cut. Not my throat. Not his mark. The thread. The pain snapped so violently the room vanished for half a breath. Cassian screamed as if something had been ripped from his spine. I fell backward, hitting a stone, but the hook beneath my ribs was gone. Gone. No echo. No leash. No old hall waiting inside my body. Cassian staggered, clutching his chest. For the first time since I had known him, He looked empty, without my pain answering him. You ruined... He lunged again, blade raised from my throat. So I killed him. Dirty. Desperate and... mine. I stepped inside the swing, drove the broken glass into his wrist, and buried the ritual blade beneath his ribs. Cassian made a small sound, almost confused. I shoved the blade deeper until his weight collapsed against me. His blood soaked the torn red silk between us. You were right about one thing, I told him, breathing hard against his shoulder. They will see. He slid down to the floor at my feet. I waited until he stopped moving. Then I took the blade back. Outside, Graceire was still screaming. I kicked the moon chamber door open with one bare foot and walked out carrying Cassian Vale's blood on my hands. The corridor was smoke thick. 2 guards turned toward me. One saw my face and chose wisdom. The other chose Graceire. He came at me. I hit him with the chain still looped around my wrist and left him choking against the wall. By the time I reached the courtyard, the battle had shifted toward the moon arch. Marius stood beneath it like the last ugly root of the house, coat torn, beard wet with blood, eyes bright with the wolf under his skin. Riven faced him on shaking legs. No oath pressed the air. No command. Bent knees. Riven had only a sword, a bleeding body, and the terrible disadvantage of being a man who had chosen not to make everyone else kneel. Marius knew it. He drove Riven back with brutal, patient strikes. Each blow jarred through Riven's wounded side. Mara tried to cut in, but 2 Graceire men blocked her. Elise took one down with a snarl. Branca's spear pinned the other through the thigh. Still, Marius pressed. You gave up power, he said to Riven. For what? Gratitude? Women with kitchen knives? Sabine appeared behind him through smoke, face streaked with soot. Kitchen knives work. She threw one. Marius turned just enough that it struck his shoulder instead of his throat. That was all Riven needed. He moved in, sword low, but Marius caught him hard across the ribs. Riven dropped to one knee. My heart lurched. Marius lifted his blade. No, I said. It was not command. It was promise. I ran. Marius heard me and turned. His eyes went to the ritual blade in my hand. Then to the blood on it. Then to the torn red dress. For the first time, Marius Vale understood that his son was not coming back through that door. The moment cost him. Mara drove a dagger into the back of his knee. Branca's spear slammed across his wrist. Nessa flung a handful of crushed herb into his face, and he reeled, coughing, wolf strength faltering. Riven rose. Not alone. Mara at one side. Elise at the other. Sabine behind him with another knife already in hand. Me in front of Marius with Graceire's ritual blade. Marius bared his teeth. You think this makes law? No, I said. This makes evidence. Riven struck the sword from his hand. Mara hooked his arm back. Branca put the spear point under his jaw. I stepped close enough for Marius to see Cassian's end still wet on the blade. Graceire taught us everything, I said. Where to bleed, where to bow, where men keep keys, where they forget women listen. Marius spat blood at my feet. I smiled. Missed. Then Riven hit him. One clean blow with the pommel of his sword. Marius dropped beneath the moon arch. Not kneeling. Fallen. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the courtyard understood. Graceire's guards began throwing down weapons. Some were dragged down before they finished. Garen tried to crawl toward the east passage, but Celeste pointed without speaking, and Mara looked over. That was enough. Garen stopped crawling. The northern alphas stood among overturned benches, smoke, blood, and women who were no longer where law had placed them. The fox-collared alpha stared at Cassian's blood on my blade, then at Marius on the stones. We will need to determine, he began, what is lawful after... No. Every face turned toward me. I stepped over the broken chain at my feet and walked back into the marked circle beneath the moon arch. Before any alpha could decide what women had won, I raised the ritual blade and spoke first. Before any alpha could decide what women had won, I raised the ritual blade and spoke first. You are not judges here. The fox-collared alpha's mouth tightened. Good. Men who expected gratitude always hated correction. You were called to witness, I said. So witness. Smoke curled under the moon arch. Blood ran between the stones in thin, dark lines, finding old cracks Graceire had never bothered to mend. Marius Vale lay bound beneath his own family crest, wrists lashed behind him with ceremony chain. His beard was wet with blood. His eyes still promised ruin. Promises were cheap from the floor. Riven stood near Mara, one hand pressed to his wounded side. He looked like pain had carved him hollow and left only will inside. When he shifted forward, I gave him one glance. Not now. He stopped. That, more than anything, quieted the courtyard. Not because I commanded him. Because he chose to listen. I turned back to the alphas. Graceire sold rejected women for debt, held them below the house, prepared second claims in bridal rooms and moon chambers, used old bonds as leashes after rejection. Your law allowed it because your law named us property when no man wanted us, and trespass when we wanted ourselves. A murmur moved through the gathered packs. I lifted the blade higher. Cassian's blood still marked the steel. This ended him when he tried to force a claim over mine. Marius laughed from the stones. It came out broken and wet. Murder dressed as virtue. I looked down at him. No, self-defense dressed in your son's blood. Bronca made a pleased sound behind me. The fox-collared alpha stepped around an overturned bench. Even if Graceire acted outside custom. Custom? Sabine snapped from the kitchen passage, soot across her cheeks and a knife in each hand. Is that what we call locked cellar doors now? Rowena came forward before fear could drag her back. The widow's debt mark on her jaw stood stark in the torchlight. She carried a ledger so heavy both arms shook beneath it. Names, she said, voice flat. Payments, transfers, which alphas paid, which sons took women without ceremony first. That silenced more men than my blade had. Rowena dropped the ledger at the fox-collared alpha's feet. It opened with a slap. Mila stepped out next, narrow shoulders hunched beneath a servant shawl. Her split lip had reopened. She held strips of cloth stitched with tiny lines. Maps, she whispered. Lower rooms. Moon chamber passage. Doors they use when inspections come. Annika followed, bruised wrists tucked close to her chest until I met her eyes. She swallowed. Boots, she said. I counted boots. Graceire men, Northmark men, Vale men, the ones who went below. A northern alpha barked. This is servant gossip. Nessa turned on him so sharply he flinched. Then let healers examine the women from below, she said. Let their bodies testify where your pride cannot interrupt. No one answered that. Tala stood near the kitchen arch, one hand over her hidden belly. She was shaking. I nodded once. If you are scared, I told her softly, be useful while you shake. Her chin lifted. The pregnant ones were being marked for sale after birth, Tala said. The children too, if no alpha claimed blood. The courtyard changed. Not into mercy. Mercy was too soft a word for what arrived. It changed into knowledge. The kind that could not unknow itself. Marius strained against the chains. Lies! Oral stepped from the cellar door with the master keys hanging from one bloody hand. Then you will not mind us opening every room. He threw the keys into the marked circle. They landed beside the ritual blade. Metal beside metal. Proof beside proof. Mara dragged Garen forward then. He was alive, though not through kindness. His old oath scars had split open when Riven renounced the command, and blood had dried along his neck in ugly tracks. Mara had bound his wrists behind him and shoved cloth into his mouth. Celeste stood a little behind them, face unreadable. Garen saw Riven and tried to speak through the gag. Riven did not move. Mara leaned close to Garen's ear. Siren's name is not your shield anymore. Then she kicked his legs out and left him kneeling. I faced the Alphas again. You wanted law, I said. Here is what remains after Graceire tore its own mask off. The fox-collared Alpha's gaze flicked to Riven. And you speak for his territory? No. That word pleased me. Clean. Sharp. Free. I speak for women who will not be returned. Branka struck the butt of her spear once against stone. No woman returned, she said. Sabine echoed it from the arch. No woman returned. Nessa's voice joined older and deeper. No woman returned. Then more. Graceire women. Sanctuary women. Women wrapped in torn blankets, bloodied shawls, borrowed coats. Women who had limped out of debt rooms and bridal cages. Women holding children close. Women holding knives closer. No woman returned. The words grew until the walls seemed ashamed they had ever held anything else. The fox-collared Alpha's jaw worked. Recognition of free territory requires charter. Then write one. He stared at me. I smiled. You brought scribes, did you not? Men never come to steal a woman without paperwork. Branka laughed so loudly one of the northern guards dropped his gaze. A scribe was found near the dais, hiding beneath an overturned table with an ink case clutched to his chest. Elise hauled him out by the collar and set him upright. Write neatly, she told him. I hate bad penmanship. The scribe's hand shook over the parchment. I spoke, and he wrote. By witness of Northern Conclave, after proven violation by the Graceire Pack, the land known as Riven's Sanctuary is recognized as free refuge territory. One Alpha objected. Riven has no sanctioned pack line. Correct, I said. It is not his pack line. Riven's eyes met mine. Something opened there. Not hurt. Understanding. I continued. It will be governed by charter, a council chosen from those who live there. He may stand with it, defend it, bleed for it if he likes, but he does not own it. Riven's mouth curved faintly despite the pain. If I like? You look difficult to stop. Mara muttered, unfortunately. The scribe kept writing. The first law, I said, and the courtyard stilled again. No woman returned. Ink scratched. The second. No claim without consent. The words felt too small for what they carried. Still, they carried it. The third. A self-claimed woman is recognized under old law and new. Her body, name, labor, children, and blood cannot be transferred as debt, punishment, rejection, or political payment. The fox-collared Alpha exhaled through his nose. You ask much. No, I said. I ask late. Nessa stepped to my side, Sabine to the other, Branka behind us with her spear. Celeste came last, quiet and uncertain, standing just outside the circle until Rowena reached back and pulled her in by the wrist. Celeste looked down at that hand as if it hurt worse than being struck. Maybe it did. The Alphas signed because they saw the ledger. They signed because Marius had ordered witnesses killed. They signed because their own names might be found if we opened enough books. They signed because women with knives had taken every gate. I did not care which reason moved their hands, only that they moved. When the final seal pressed into wax, something loosened in the courtyard. Not everything. Freedom did not arrive like sunlight. It arrived like work. Heavy. Waiting. Hours. Marius watched from the ground with hatred burning through his silence. I crouched before him. You will answer for every name in that ledger. His lip curled. To whom? I looked around the courtyard. At Annika. At Tala. At Rowena. At Mila. At the women from below. To them. For the first time, Marius had no answer. Later, when the wounded were counted and the dead covered, I found Riven near the broken fountain beyond the west arch. Nessa had wrapped him in fresh bandages and threatened him into sitting. He looked up when I approached, eyes moving over my torn dress, my bruises, my bloodied hands. He did not ask if I was all right. He knew better. I heard Cassian is dead, he said. He tried to claim me. Riven's expression went still. He failed, I added. Yes, he said quietly. He did. We sat with a careful space between us while Graceire groaned behind our backs. After a while, Riven spoke. If I ask you to marry me, will it sound like another claim? My breath caught. Not because I feared the question. Because I wanted the answer and hated how much wanting still felt dangerous. That depends, I said. Are you asking to keep me safe, or asking because you want me beside you when I'm already free? Riven looked at me then, not as an alpha, not as a savior, just a man who had broken his oldest power and had nothing left to offer but himself. Because I love you free. The words went through me gently. That was new. I looked toward the courtyard where women were tearing down Graceire banners and carrying out the living. Yes, I said, on one condition. His gaze sharpened. Name it. No collar, no claiming ceremony, no vows written by men who think wives are softer property. For the first time that night, Riven smiled. Then we write our own. I reached for his hand. He let me choose the distance. I laced my blood-marked fingers through his. Good, I said, because I have corrections. I had corrections. Many of them. None were made in Graceire. We left that house with ledgers, witnesses, wounded women, 2 wagons of stolen stores, and Marius Vale bound in the back like a lesson that had learned too late to keep its mouth shut. The northern alphas rode away with signed copies of the charter tucked inside their coats, and fear tucked deeper. Good. Fear made men remember what ink alone did not. We did not marry beneath Graceire's moon arch. I would have rather kissed Riven in a ditch. We married at the sanctuary. Damaged. Breathing. Ours. The east gate still bore scorch marks. One wall had been braced with new timber. The training yard was uneven, where blood had been scrubbed from the stones. Half the windows in the long hall wore patched shutters instead of glass. The women decorated it anyway. They hung repaired cloth strips from the rafters, red thread braided through torn banners, lanterns swinging from hooks, rosemary and mountain sage tied in bundles above the doors. Someone had woven dried lavender through the training posts, which made Elise complain that violence should not smell so pretty. Sabine baked wedding bread big enough to shame a harvest table. Branka stood over it with a knife. To cut slices? I asked. To threaten anyone who touches it before time. Useful. I am many things. Nessa officiated because no priest of old law was invited, and because she had the voice of a woman who could bless you or bury you with equal competence. She pinned red thread through my thick, oiled curls with hands that only shook once. When I noticed, she sniffed. Old fingers. Liar. Bride, she said, do not start. I am not a bride if it requires obedience. Then be a difficult bride and stand still. So I stood still. My dress was not Graceire red. It was deep wine and brown gold, stitched by Mila from cloth the women chose together. No collar, no high ritual throat. My self-claiming mark showed clearly above the neckline, dark and mine against my deep brown skin. Celeste came to the edge of the yard just before the lanterns were lit. Her red gold hair was bound back. A healing bruise shadowed one cheek. She stopped outside the circle as if the air itself might refuse her. I can watch from the hall, she said quietly. No, I said. Her eyes lifted. You can stand where people see you trying. That is not forgiveness. I know. She swallowed. Then Branka shoved a bundle of herbs into her arms. Hold these, and look less tragic. Celeste blinked down at them. Sabine muttered, Impossible task. Celeste's mouth twitched. Not happiness. Something smaller. It was a beginning, and beginnings were often ugly little things. Riven waited beneath the ash tree at the edge of the yard. Mara stood beside him in black leather, solemn as a blade. His dark hair was tied at his nape. He still looked too thin from wolfsbane and oath-breaking, his scar severe across his face, but his shoulders were steady. No command pressed from him. No old power bent the air. Only his gaze found me and held. Not claiming, asking. I walked to him because I wanted to. That was the whole ceremony before it began. Nessa lifted both hands. We are gathered without pack priest, without alpha claim, without debt mark, and without permission from dead men who would object if they had the breath. Branka said, Let them object. I brought a shovel. Nessa did not even look at her. We are gathered to witness choice. The rings were carried by Annika on a strip of red cloth. Her bruised wrists had begun to heal. She walked slowly, careful with the precious burden. The rings were dark metal braided through with dull silver. The broken Graceire collar. The remains of Riven's old oath blade. Oppression made into vow. Power made into surrender. Riven looked at the rings for a long moment. Then he looked at me. I do not take you, he said, voice low enough that the yard leaned closer. I do not own you. I do not shelter you as property. I stand beside you because you have allowed me there. If you walk ahead, I will follow. If you stand still, I will wait. If you tell me no, I will honor it the first time. My throat tightened. Annoying. Beautiful. I took his ring and slid it onto his finger. I was sold, rejected, hunted, and named bait, I said. I come to you as none of those things. I come as myself. I bring a sharp tongue, a suspicious heart, and hands that know how to survive. If I stay tomorrow, it will be because I choose again. Riven's eyes burned. Then I will earn another yes tomorrow. I put my hand in his. Nessa's voice softened. Witnessed. The women answered. We witness. No magic struck the sky. No law stamped us into place. Only the sanctuary breathing around us, damaged and alive, and Riven's hand holding mine, like it understood that holding was not the same as keeping. Then Branka wiped her face with the heel of her palm and pointed at Riven. If you become foolish, I will make her a widow. Riven bowed his head. Understood. Good. Kiss before I cry and have to blame someone. I turned to Riven. He waited. Still asking. I rolled my eyes, took his face between both hands, and kissed him first. The yard erupted. Sabine shouted something rude. Elise whistled. Mara looked away as if joy were a private injury. Celeste smiled into the herbs she held. For once, no one in the world dragged me anywhere. I walked into the night with my husband beside me. Our room overlooked the training yard, the same place where I had once caught him watching me from a window and decided he was either dangerous or lonely. He was both. Now he shut the door and stood with his back to it, not moving toward me. Riven. His eyes lifted. If you ask permission for every breath, we will be here until winter. A faint smile touched his mouth. Noted. He crossed the room slowly, not stalking, not cornering, coming close enough for me to choose the rest. I chose. I caught the front of his shirt and pulled him down to me. The kiss was different without witnesses. Deeper. Hungrier. His hand settled at my waist, careful at first, and I felt the restraint in his fingers. It was not fear of me. It was fear of taking 1 inch more than I gave. Sweet man. Infuriating man. I broke the kiss just enough to speak against his mouth. Do not ask like I am glass. Trust me to know my own yes. His breath changed. Tell me if I am too much. I will. Tell me if I'm not enough. I smiled. You will know. That undid him better than any blade. He kissed me again, and this time his hands learned confidence. He unlaced my dress with deliberate care, then pushed it from my shoulders. The fabric fell around my feet in a soft circle. His gaze moved over me slowly. My dark skin, my scars, my bruises fading, my strong thighs, the mark at my throat made by my own hand. Not judging, not measuring, honoring. Heat rose beneath my skin. My body has been priced enough, I said. His jaw tightened. I touched his face. Tonight it is mine in wanting. Yes, he said roughly. Yours. And I want you. He lifted me then, hands firm beneath my thighs, and carried me to the bed, as if strength could be tenderness when used properly. He laid me down, and followed only when I pulled him with me. His mouth found my throat first, beside the self-claiming mark, not over it, then my shoulder, my breast. His tongue moved over me with slow reverence until my breath broke and my hands buried in his dark hair. Riven. He looked up. I hated how beautiful he was like that. Eyes dark, mouth warm for my skin, waiting for my next yes. I gave it by drawing him back to me. Clothes disappeared badly after that. His shirt caught at one shoulder. I laughed into his mouth. He cursed softly. I helped with the trousers because patience had limits, even on wedding nights. When his body came against mine, bare and hot and real, something deep inside me quieted. Not calmed. Claimed by myself. I opened my legs around him and felt his breath stutter. Flavia. Yes. He entered me slowly, one hand braced beside my head, the other holding my hip like he trusted my strength. I felt every inch of him, the stretch, the burn, the sweet fullness that made my nails drag down his back. He stopped when he was seated deep. I looked up at him. If you ask whether I am well, I will bite you before the mark. His laugh came broken and breathless. Then he moved, slow at first, then deeper when I lifted to meet him. There was no law in it, no debt, no old hall, no Cassian-shaped shadow waiting beneath my ribs. Only Riven's body over mine and around mine, my hands choosing where to hold, my mouth choosing where to kiss, my voice saying his name because pleasure deserved witness too. He learned me quickly. The angle that made my back arch, the pressure that pulled a gasp from my throat, the rhythm that turned my thoughts useless and bright. I was not quiet. I had been quiet too often in pain. I would not be quiet in joy. When release broke through me, it did not feel like surrender. It felt like a door opening from the inside. I clung to him, shaking, breathless, laughing once because my body was mine, and still generous enough to give me this. Riven followed with my name against my neck, trembling as if his strength had finally found somewhere safe to fall. After, he stayed above me on shaking arms. I pulled him down. Beside me, I whispered. He rolled carefully, taking me with him, keeping us tangled. His hand moved over my back in slow strokes. For a while, there was only breath. Then I lifted myself onto one elbow and looked at the place where his neck met his shoulder. He went very still. I smiled. Frightened? No. Liar. Yes. I bent and kissed the skin there. This is not ownership. No. Not protection. No. Not law. His voice was rough. No. I looked into his eyes. I am mine before I am yours. Always. My teeth touched his skin. Then be mine too. He closed his eyes. I bit. Not gently enough to make it meaningless, not cruelly enough to make it pain alone. Blood touched my tongue, and beneath it something warm answered. Not command, not chain, but recognition. Riven shuddered under me and held still, receiving what I gave. When I lifted my head, his eyes were wet. "Do you want mine?" he asked. I leaned down until my mark brushed his mouth. "I want your mark because I ask for it." His hand cupped the back of my neck. "Say no once," he whispered, "and I stop forever." I know. That is why I say yes. His mouth opened over the curve between my neck and shoulder. When his teeth sank in, pain bloomed first, then heat, then a pleasure so deep it felt like my bones had remembered music. I held his shoulder and let it pass through me, not erasing my self-claiming mark, not covering it, not making me less mine. Adding. Only adding. Riven kissed the mark he had made, then the one I had made myself. "This one first," he murmured against my throat. "Yes," I whispered. Morning came quietly. No horn. No chain. No matron's keys. Light slipped through the repaired shutter and laid itself across the floorboards. Outside, hammers rang in the yard. Sabine shouted at someone to stop dropping nails near the bread oven. Branka threatened violence over crooked fence posts. Women laughed. Rebuilding sounded rude and alive. Riven lay beside me, not above me as Alpha, not between me and the door as jailer, not holding me like possession. Beside me. Husband. Choice. I touched the ring on my finger, dark metal warmed by my skin. No collar. No debt. No pack law hanging over my throat. Only the mark I made, the mark I chose, and the man breathing next to me, as if he knew staying would always be asked again. Outside, the sanctuary rose around us. For the first time in my life, staying did not feel like surrender. It felt like choosing home.
hold you close and feel the light. Even though the world won't understand, I'll keep you safe, I'll take your hand. In the silence, we'll defy